Well, we just got off the air for an hour on Sunday morning, Mother's Day. Sitting in studio with me today is Peter Mimo, and we are all fired up. Peter, for the next 30 minutes, I want to talk about strictly the Trump cases. Let's start with Mar-a-Lago and Judge Cannon. You're up to bat, Pete.
Well, it's good to be on After Dark, and the Trump cases are, personally, I think it's a political persecution, not prosecution. It's a political prosecution as well. The case with the documents, it turns out that the FBI apparently either put top secret documents into the boxes and sent them to Mar-a-Lago, or brought top secret documents with them and inserted them into the boxes during the raid.
It's another hoax, Peter.
Another Russia hoax all over again. Now, luckily, you have an actual judge in Miami who understands the law and is going to hold the DOJ's feet to the fire. Now, the DOJ said under oath that they did not tamper or have any evidence. Now it turns out that they did.
Another lie.
So they lied to the court. Yep. Now, when you're trying to put somebody in jail for the rest of his life, and you're coming in with charges and you're lying about the charges to the court, I can't imagine that a judge takes that lightly. I just can't imagine that this is going to be swept under the rug.
And you know what I don't understand, Pete? The FBI knew precisely what was in there, because when they raided Mar-a-Lago, they went in and saw what all the documents were. They knew what all the documents were. He was told. It's not like they confiscated them and said, we're taking them. So if they really were of suspicious nature, then they would have taken those documents, and they didn't take anything except tell them to lock it up. So,
well, that was the big question, because when they did the Mar-a-Lago raid, they said, we found all these top secret documents. And everybody said, but you've been through those documents for the last 8 months, 3 or 4 times. Why didn't you take them then if they were that important?
Right.
Well, as it turns out, they weren't there. The FBI brought them with them. And then made it seem like they were laying all over the floor.
It's crazy.
Just a total hoax. And I'm starting to wonder, how deep is the rot in the FBI? What agents would be involved in something like that?
Yeah.
In Germany, everybody at Nuremberg said we were just following orders. Well, you just can't follow orders if it's the wrong order. And at some point, these agents who have sworn a oath to the Constitution have to step up and say, I'm sorry, I just can't be a party to this.
Pete, who's wearing the white hats nowadays? Who could we trust? If we can't trust the DOJ, if we can't trust the president, if we can't trust the vice president, if we can't trust all these legal agencies, who can we trust? We have lost all law and order. And frankly, these agencies are doing whatever the heck they want. And there's no checks and balances.
Well,
like
they
banks.
got away with it with the Russia collusion thing, okay? Comey was on TV, was having meetings at the White House. He knew the dossier was paid for by Hillary Clinton. He was going along with it. He was complicit with it. They lied to be able to spy on the entire Trump campaign, and they got away with it. So I guess it's Katie bar the door now. What do they have to be afraid of?
Where was Bill Barr during all this? Where was he?
I guess
the
big bear was hibernating. Yeah. But this all happened under his nose. There's no way to avoid that. He's starting to come around a little bit now, but for me, too little, too late. But it's just amazing to me that type of a moral rot is so embedded in our institutions. So DOJ, State Department, FBI, DHS, all these agencies, they seem like they're corrupted to the core.
Yeah. And when you talk about a two-tier system, let's go back to Hillary Clinton when she whitewashed all her emails. Anybody else could never
She filmed it.
Yep. Could never get away with that.
Yeah, you'll never get away with that.
Yeah, it's public knowledge, going to tell you something. And Biden took classified documents when he was not even president.
Correct. Stole them out of the skip.
Did anything happen to him?
Nothing.
So why is this all about Donald Trump? This is like communism. The judicial system is collapsing on this man for things that other people have done that nobody gave a darn about.
This is really disgraceful that this is happening in this country, that a local DA in Manhattan can actually interfere with a presidential election for the United States. And DA in Manhattan can control what's going to happen to Israel, because if Trump gets in, obviously Israel's going to be fine.
Yep.
A DA in Manhattan can control whether Iran gets a nuclear weapon, because Trump would stop them from that. That's not how our system is supposed to work. Not supposed to work like that.
I want to get back to Judge Cannon. So she has postponed that trial, and obviously with the facts that come about, I don't even know if that trial ever goes to trial.
Well, that's a good question. And if you really want to get up to date on exactly what's going on in that trial, you go to Julie Kelly's website. She'll fill you in completely. Now, there's a number of hearings that are coming up, both on the evidence of the case, what top secret documents can be shared with the public and can be shared in the courtroom. And also, she's given the DOJ, I think, a month or so to come together with how they concocted this lie.
Yep.
And whether or not the case is still valid to go forward. So that's going to be a really big case. The DOJ is either going to go in there and lie again, or they're going to have to come clean to this judge who's holding their feet to the fire, which we don't see in any of the other courtrooms.
No. Prediction, does this case get thrown out?
Yes. This case, Espionage Act against the president? How's that even possible?
Yeah.
If I'm the president, I'm allowed to have these documents. If I'm the president and I'm negotiating with the president of Russia, I'm allowed to say we have nuclear weapons aimed at you.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of my negotiation. I am the executive branch.
Right.
I determine what's classified and what's not. Nobody else. There's no phone call to the National Archives. Could you imagine if a president had to go through a procedure to declassify information? He's in charge of that, him and only him.
Yeah, and I want to take you back to that raid that day. Think about how disgraceful a former president of the United States, and you're going through his wife's underwear. What did they find in there? Documents? What did they expect to see?
They didn't find anything in there, but
they
listen, they had already known what color her underwear was ever since he came down the escalator, because they had the spying operation going on him and his campaign the whole time. So, I mean, this is just a disgrace. It's a perversion of justice. I don't know how they can possibly get away with that. I don't think Judge Cannon is going to allow them to get away with that.
No.
We'll have to see how that shakes out. But now you've got a big immunity case for the Washington case, which was him, starting the Ku Klux Klan Act and the Enron Act. Not insurrection. They don't have him on that. They don't have any violence or anything like that. They got him on the 1883 Ku Klux Klan Act, and they got him on the Enron Act, which the Supreme Court is having a ruling on the Enron Act now. They use that for all the January 6th prosecutions, whether that's even constitutional, because that has to do with tampering or destroying evidence. So I think the Supreme Court's going to rule against Jack Smith on that and the DOJ. And then you have the immunity, the presidential immunity. So now if someone comes to you and you're president and they say, hey, there's fraud in the election. There was all kinds of fraud going on with mail-in ballots and stuff in ballot boxes.
Which is proved, incidentally.
Yeah,
it's proved. It's not like it's not proved. It was proved.
Exactly. Doesn't the president have a responsibility to investigate that?
Of course.
So how could these acts not be part of his presidential authority? You can't have a president that's sitting there thinking, well, gosh, should we take out that terrorist? But if I do, I could go to jail after I'm no pret.
Yep.
You can't run a country like that. A president has to have immunity of his presidential decisions and his presidential actions. This has nothing to do with going into the Tenderloin at 3 a.m. and shooting a bum in the head. This has nothing to do with that. So anybody that brings that up, he's going to have SEAL Team 6 kill his. This is all ridiculous fantasies.
You have that.
And I was so surprised to see the Supreme Court. I think it was Kagan that asked that question. I'm thinking, what kind of an educated question is that? That
Yeah.
has absolutely nothing to do with, presidential activities.
Well, let's talk about immunity. So right now, the case was presented from both sides to the Supreme Court. And to me, it was preposterous when somebody asked, well, what would happen if the president decided to kill somebody? Should they be given extreme and not just undefined, but defined immunity? And I said to myself, are you people nuts? Are you really nuts? You're going to take such an eccentric idea that a president was going to kill somebody? The basics are simple. Like you say, you are in meetings with your people and your staff, and you're running a country. You have decisions that you have to make. The last thing in the world that you need to be thinking about is somebody going to sue me for a decision that I
could go
made.
to jail for the rest of my life.
Yeah, exactly. So,
for a decision I made trying to save our country or trying to protect our country.
So what does the Supreme Court have in front of them that they're having such difficulty understanding as to what decision should be made?
Well, here's
Explain
the problem.
that to us.
We've never had a situation where a president was arrested or charged with a crime.
Yeah.
It's never happened in our history. So this is, I don't know, post-constitutional, all these constitutional issues at the Supreme Court at the same time. For what reason? For one reason. That's to either damage Trump politically in the media, which they're very complicit to do.
Of course.
Or actually put him in jail. So the Democrat Party is pushing the ends of our Constitution.
Yep.
So the Supreme Court has to make all these rulings. Now, what's going to happen when they rule against the Democrats, against Jack Smith? Right away, they're going to say, oh, it's a Republican court, all Trump's appointees, and we have to pack the court. So, you can't win for losing from these people. They win either way.
Well, the question becomes then, as we go on, let's talk about the Fani Willis case. Go ahead, Pete.
The Fani Willis case, that I don't think will ever come to trial because right now she's under investigation from an internal group in Georgia. I don't know if it's from the state attorney general's office or it's from the governor's office, but she is currently under investigation for how she misappropriated funds. They happen to not believe that she reimbursed her boyfriend, $500,000 in cash? I don't believe it. I don't think anybody in their right mind would believe that a lawyer would keep, especially a district attorney, would keep that kind of money laying around to pay someone in cash and then have her father come in and say, oh, yeah, we pay everybody in cash.
Yep.
I'm calling fugazi on that.
Yep.
I'm saying that's a lie,
Yep.
and only a moron would believe that.
Yeah, and let's go back and remind our listeners that was about election interference. That's what that case was all about.
The case was about what they call fake electors. There's no such thing as a fake elector, okay? If you challenge an election and you're in Congress when they're counting the votes, if you don't have electors there, the other guy wins. So you have to have an alternate set of electors. This has happened many times in the history of our country. It is not criminal. They are criminalizing politics.
Yep.
So if I was in the Supreme Court, I'd say this case should never even be here.
Yep.
This is political stuff. Congress handles this. These are not violations of criminal law to challenge an election. That's how the system works.
And how about Judge Scott McAfee? I mean, where is he at? What a weak link as a judge. He can't even make any decisions that are appropriately. And to me, it's all based against Trump because this guy wants to be elected again, I guess, or hold office again. Is he elected? And that's what it is. Is he up for re-election?
Are you talking about the guy in Manhattan?
No, I'm talking about the guy in the Fani Willis case.
Yeah, he'll probably
judge.
come up for re-election again.
But he was so weak in his decisions, Pete. It's clear cut. These people violated, I don't know what laws. I guess
agree.
state laws for a DA and a prosecutor. I mean, the
conflict of interest.
Yes,
Should
the
have
lady was a
rescinded.
joke.
Misappropriation of funds. being involved, romantically with your employee. These are all violations
Yeah.
of what she's supposed to be doing there. So,
To the tune of
you
like
know. Well,
650,000 of tax
listen, I
paper
guess
money.
Fulton County has so much money.
Yeah.
They've got so much extra cash around that they can afford to just overpay people that happen to have romantic interests with each other.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy and it's embarrassing. But the case in Manhattan is the one that's been in the news all week.
Yep.
Now, I don't know. I think, do you remember Stormy Daniels from way back when?
Not really. Do
She,
you? Not really. Do you? Listen, I'll
even
tell you
if
one
I
thing.
did, I'd have to say no.
I would have rumbled in the sheets with her. I wish that I was around those days and I had an affiliation.
She was one
not
of
bad
those
looking.
porn stars who used to come around and they would advertise they're going to be at cheerleaders
That's
for
right.
2 days
That's right.
or whatever, and they would try and get people in. But that case to me is a giant. It's just
What's the crime?
Exactly, it's such an embarrassment. And for me, I call that a Potemkin Village courtroom. Now, do you ever hear that
Explain to
word,
me that one.
Potemkin
No.
Village?
No, and explain
There's
our
a guy
listeners.
from Russia. His name was Potemkin. And after Catherine the Great killed her husband and took over Russia, Potemkin was in charge of the countryside, keeping the people happy. So Catherine the Great wanted to go out and about and see all her throngs of loving citizens. So what he did is he set up a village. And she was on a boat in a river, and it was all painted stuff. It was all fake. It was a facade. There were no people there. It was just painted, and it looked like there were people and everything. And when she went past the village, they actually played music. It looked like, it was a big party going on. She went past the village. They would take that village and move it further upstream, and then she would go through it again. So they came up with a name. They named it after him. It's called Potemkin.
Wow.
An impressive facade or show designated to hide an undesirable fact or condition. And what they're trying to hide, the undesirable fact or condition, is the fact that there is no case. Now, this is an accounting case, a financial accounting alleged crime. What would Stormy Daniels, a porn star, possibly add to a finance?
And she did.
Nothing.
Here's a lady seeing ghosts. But I want to remind our listeners that what this case is about is falsification of documents, hush money, and where is the crime mentioned? We haven't seen it. So they brought this lady on, and she's talking about seeing ghosts and everything else under the sun. She made a fool out of herself, frankly, and there was nothing to be gained by what she had to say.
What?
Now you're going to have Michael Cohen come on this Monday, and he's a convicted felon, a liar, lied to Congress and everybody else under the sun, spent time in jail, and they're going to use him as their star witness for what?
This is an embarrassment to our country. Could you imagine if they brought in Franklin Roosevelt's girlfriend and said, how many times did you have sex? Where did you have sex? Could you imagine if they brought in Kennedy's girlfriend and said, how many times did you have sex? Where did you have sex? This is not what we do to our presidents.
No.
Our presidents, hopefully, if they're healthy men, have sex. That's what they do.
Yep.
That's between the family and God.
Yep.
I had nothing to do with me. I don't elect presidents based on who they slept with and when. Okay, I elect presidents on who's going to be a strong leader for our country. I want a good moral guide as well. Don't forget, the events they're talking about were 20 years ago.
Statute of limitations. Where's
what
that?
What does that have to do
Of
with
course.
any of the stuff that we're talking
Well,
about?
Listen.
Listen, they had 7 years to file that case, and they did nothing.
Yep.
Now, during election season, he sits in court gagged. Biden's out campaigning. And plus, look at the damage. Every day in the New York Times, they've done all the salacious stuff.
Of course.
It has nothing to do with
But
the
his
case.
popularity is only gaining. And I have to tell you, Pete, Bragg campaigned on destroying Donald Trump. And that's what he's attempting to do. And to be honest with you, I mean, you're in it, like you always say, Democratic grand jury, Democratic judge, Democratic this, Democratic that. Here's a guy that's on trial in front of a jury that is in New York. How does a guy even get a fair trial? I have no idea what's going to happen. Have you ever looked at most people that sit in on juries? I mean, honest to God, you wouldn't use them to do anything in your life. I mean, a lot of these people are fools. And it's an indication the president of the United States, no crime in front of a bunch of people that probably don't have an idea what's going on. I mean, this doesn't make sense. Could he be found guilty?
I think there's a really good chance he's going to be found
Of
guilty.
what crime?
Well, we don't know yet. That's
Well, how can you go on trial for 2 weeks and not have a crime?
What do you tell your lawyer to defend you against? Right? I mean,
don't
it's
know.
crazy. You know, the ability of the people to have a free and fair election, to me, greatly outweighs the need for a dubious, at best, legal action against the president or the opponent of the Democrats. I mean, it's so obvious what they're doing. The real threat to our system, or democracy, as they like to call it, I think, is these excesses of the progressive left. Have DAs filing cases against presidential candidates. They're perverting our system of justice. It's never happened before.
Right. You know what bothers me, too? Here's a case where the prosecutors bring in witnesses the day before, and the defense doesn't even know that there's a witness list so they can prepare for these guys.
I've never seen anything like that.
I've never seen anything like that either, Pete. Pete, give me
crazy.
your prediction on that, because I want to get to our final case.
My prediction on that is that I think he'll find one person in the jury to not go along with this facade.
Does that mean it's a hung jury and it's replayed, or that means that it's a hung jury and the case is over?
That's a tough one, but I do. This case is so frivolous and so ridiculous that I have faith that even the Biden voters will say, no, wait a second. This is not right. This is not how we do it in this country. There's no crime here. So I believe that we'll find one person with some common sense to, there's two lawyers on the jury. So that can mean two things. Either they will understand the facts of the case and convince the other jurors.
Democrats, Pete.
Yes.
Democrats,
convince the other jurors that he's guilty. Or it could mean that they see through the facade of how ridiculous the case is.
Yep.
I don't know how to call that.
Yeah. Pete, I just want to get back to, I know it's been decided a while ago, but I want to get back to the real estate case in front of Judge Engro, brought to you by Letitia James. That case was brought up. She's another one that campaigned that she was going to destroy and take down Donald Trump. And, there was a $354 million verdict. Once again, no victims in that situation. And if you listen to Kevin O'Leary, who was an advocate of how stupid this case was, and that basically all developers do the same exact thing. And I guess we could go back for 2 seconds and rehash what happened in that case. Was that there was, appraisers that did appraisals for the bank, and the bank accepted these appraisals because either their own people went out and looked at the value of the real estate, or they accepted that. And frankly, the whole case was a fraud. Banks got paid back. There was no victims involved. The banks were thrilled to do business with Donald Trump. And here's a man that got hit with the verdict for $354 million, and then had to pay. What did he have to pay as a bond? Like $175,000.
And she fought him on that.
Pete, no victim here. How does this happen
with
in
all
today's
the stuff
society?
going on in New York, with all the crime and the police being beat up in Times Square and the loss of revenue because businesses are closing and no commercial real estate, or not no commercial real estate, but there's a problem getting rentals for the commercial real estate. Yep. With all the problems in New York, that's what the Attorney General has to focus on? Some made-up crime that meant nothing? How much money has been spent on the Bragg prosecution, the Letitia James prosecution? Do you think that might help some of the homeless people in New York?
Yeah.
Think maybe that'll clean up the World War I memorial that the Ghazians decided to deface? Boy, that money could be put to great use.
Yeah. Well, you want to destroy this person, number one. Number two, you want to make sure that he doesn't run again, because the Democrats have to be afraid of this guy. It's not so much that he's going to be back in office and he's going to look for where all the dead bodies are. I mean, we need this guy to be able to achieve all kind of goals for us like we had before. Look what we had. We had closed borders, as an example. Inflation was under control. We had no wars. The economy of the United States of America was great. People, as I want to, when were working, everything was going along in a smooth way. I guess my question to you is, Pete, this is unbelievable to me and incredible. Here's a man fighting 4 major lawsuits all at one time, campaigning, and has his sanity amongst himself. How does this happen, Pete? And where does this end up?
I have much more respect for Trump now than I ever did, because for him to be able to withstand this onslaught, you're talking about the full power of the federal government, the DOJ, the FBI, the State Department, the CIA, the Department of Homeland Security, Department of National Intelligence, the judicial system that he's getting hit with these activist judges. This is a strong man. Yep. This is an extremely strong man. And there's also another message there. If they can do that to him, what can they do to me and you?
Yep.
Okay? And I believe they'll keep attacking Trump. I believe they're going to attack him additionally as we go on. You'll hear about tax evasion and all these crazy. The man's 80 years old. If he was a criminal, it would have surfaced before now.
Of course.
Okay, people don't turn into criminals at 80. There's a pattern. Every psychoanalysis of criminal activity will tell you people start young. Trump is a model citizen. Can you imagine if they looked into my background the way they looked into him? No. I'd be doing 120 years at Rikers Island.
And you know what really concerns me, Pete, which is really nuts? Any DA in any state could bring a lawsuit against anybody. Statute of limitations doesn't matter. These people are destroying the fabric of America, and you're seeing it happen right in front of you with a former president.
That's what I say. The real threat to democracy or our system is the excesses of the progressive left. I mean, it's right in your face. These people are perverting all our institutions, the FBI, the Department of Education, the CIA. All these are being perverted. They're ruining all these agencies. How do you ever clean that up? I think the rot is just too deep at this point. I mean, this is a bureaucracy you're talking about. These are not people that get elected. You can't fire them in many cases.
Yep.
I don't know how it ever changes. I really, really don't. But I wanted to talk about DEI a little bit, which is the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I came up with a theory over the weekend as I was sitting. You know, I like to call them epiphanies.
Yeah. And
I had an epiphany. And I thought everybody that loves DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, including all these Democratic senators and the president, you see all these people talking about it. When you go to the hospital, there should be 2 waiting rooms. One for the finest and best doctors available that did the best in school, and the diversity, equity, and inclusion one.
Which line are you getting?
I'm getting in the finest.
Okay.
Okay. When you go to fly on a plane, they should have a diversity plane, and they should have
for
the
pilots.
best pilots in the world plane.
Yeah.
I'm getting on the best pilots in the world plane.
Yeah.
I don't have anything against anybody. I want the best people in the most important positions. I'm not interested in equity. You're talking about cleaning the streets? Great. Let's have diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
When you're talking about flying planes or being a doctor? No, I don't think so.
Big hurdle. Peter, before we close, any last thoughts?
My last thoughts are we're in the fight of our life. And, we're going to have to band together. We had subterfuge, acrimony within our own ranks. And if that's just an indication of what's going on in the in the Republican Party, we need to bring it together, man. We need to circle the wagons. We got to figure out who our people are, who our people are not.
Yep.
We have to elect strong candidates, and we got to hope that people hopefully listen to our show and get some good information as a voter as to who the strong candidates really are. The last thing that we want to do is elect people who look great on paper and then get to Washington and don't vote the way we want. We need people that are going to go there, they're going to run and stand on true conservative values. Reagan won 49 states doing that.
Yep.
We can do it again. We see what's happening in Washington now with people not voting. The Democrats support our speaker more than the Republicans do. That's not a place I want to be.
There you go. Listen, you have been listening to the Barry Sable Show with Friends After Dark. You could find us on Spotify, Rumble, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Barry Sable and Friends on WPHT, Instagram. Just search Barry Sable and Friends to connect with us. We will see you next week.